Jagex is gutting yet another system within RuneScape, and this time it's the auras on the chopping block. They're planning to be removing all of them, some permanently and some others will see their powers being redistributed to other pieces of content, making them a permanent unlock instead of something you can only use for an hour every few hours unless you had aura refreshes. Yes, this also applies to your trusty Penance and Vampirism auras. The latter, I think they should not replace at all, but we will get to that take. Whilst I'm over the moon with these changes, as I personally consider the aura system as one of the most problematic ones within RuneScape, the way jagex is suggesting to redistribute some of these powers are not that great. And truthfully, should these powers even be redistributed? Redistributed is such a hard word to say for a Dutchie. I don't know what it is, but hey. Anyway, let me know down below what you think before I start going into my arguments. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already, as we're trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And of course, leave that like to help me get this video seen by as many people as possible. Now enough yapping, my name's Chevalric. Let's talk about auras. We do have to start off with a quick rundown for anyone who might not be too familiar with the aura system and how you obtained most of them, as I recently gained a lot of new subscribers that are new/returning players. Sorry to all the nerds who know, this won't take long and you might actually learn something new because I actually did. Auras were, or well, as of me writing the script still are, a system of buffs to various skills, including combat, that could be activated for an hour and then had a cooldown of about 3 to 4 hours afterwards. This could be reset by using aura refreshes bought from Boar's Retreat or previously earned from Treasure Hunter, and well, it's just a terrible system. It made it so that when you were playing the game, due to the power of some of these, you felt like you could only really play efficiently or enjoyably when using them, and when your aura ran out, you kinda had to do something else. Bossing hours is a term you might have heard, but it's not just because an instance runs for an hour, it's because most combat auras lasted an hour, when extended, and afterwards people would go do something else, because auras were so powerful that it just kind of felt bad playing without them. Sadly, this hourly concept didn't just apply to combat, but also to skilling. Let's take the Lumberjack aura as an example. When you had this active, you have a 15% increased chance of chopping a tree when you have the highest tier of the aura unlocked. Very powerful. Or going back to the combat ones, the Reckless aura. When you have this activated, you will increase your range damage, accuracy and level by 10% at the cost of 15% defense reduction. That is more than upgrading your weapon from tier 90 to 95 in certain cases. And it's something you don't have to do anything for once you have obtained it, besides obviously clicking activate on it. And then we haven't even talked about something like the Wisdom aura, giving you a 2% XP increase for fuck all for 90 minutes. Or the Jack of Trades aura, giving you the equivalent of a free experience lamp every single day, which could have been done twice if you did use an aura reset on it. And that's not even mentioning the worst part, besides the combat auras, these were all not earnable through gameplay. You had to buy them with loyalty points, which only are earned by you having an active membership, and the longer that membership is active, the more points you would get. So if your membership would lapse, your point amount gaining would also reset to what it was before. Even at the highest rates, it would take you months to buy and upgrade just one aura, let alone all the ones you would want. Like I mentioned, the combat auras are actually earnable in game through the Marks of War system, which made them slightly less egregious, but even so, the fact you can pretty much only boss for an hour and then have to wait for 3 hours to reuse it again is just terrible game design. The power of these combat buffing auras are actually being redistributed with the 120 skill releases in early March, making it so that 120 range is roughly the same damage output as 99 currently is with the aura active, and obviously that will apply to the other styles as well. Which honestly I think is a great way to buff all the styles, because introducing further power creep is something they need to be very careful of, and all the bosses are already designed with these auras existing in place, so having 120 being 99 plus aura and maybe some tweaks here and there is probably the best way forward. And that power creep I just mentioned is the exact issue jagex is facing right now, because a lot of content is made with the idea of auras being a thing in mind. Let's take woodcutting for example. When balancing the skill, jagex considers all buffs available, including the aura. which is about the same buff as all the other things you can gather. So the XP and chop rates are balanced between not using an aura and using an aura, to not make it too overpowered to use the aura, but also not too miserable when not using one. On top of that, they consider the fact you can't use an aura permanently, which presents a further issue of what if they do introduce the changes they're suggesting, where you can use Lumberjack permanently? Will that not throw the balancing of woodcutting out of whack across the board? I hope that the woodcutting example can give you a bit of an insight of the complexion of balancing something like this. I'm obviously not a game designer, but that is pretty much my interpretation of reading the blog that they posted about auras and their plans on removing / redistributing them. So what are they planning to be doing about this? Let's start off with the skilling ones first, before moving on to the trusty Vampirism and Penance auras. First of all the auras you see on screen are being removed, which I think is great. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what half these do. The only really interesting one here is the Quarry Monster aura, as all the other gathering skill auras are being redistributed somewhere else. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think most of them don't really have to. Focus Siphoning increases your success rate when siphoning in Runespan. Enrichment increases your success rate when siphoning Divination Springs, and the Sure-Footed aura allows you to have a lower fail chance of agility obstacles. And these are all being added as balancing changes for the skills. So Runespan Siphoning will just get a success rate increase, just like Divination does, and agility will. And I think that should be the approach for all the skilling auras, and not what they suggested in the design blog. Because when it comes to the auras for fishing, firemaking, woodcutting and hunter, pretty much all the gathering skills, where I also think mining should be, they're thinking of replacing the Anachronia Totem of Auras effect, which currently extends your aura timer, which obviously will be useless after this update, with a Totem of the Skiller. Pretty much giving those effects to the totem system, where you activate it once a week and get a permanent buff. This suggestion just is not it in my opinion, as I think it would be way better if they look at success chances of gathering and catching, etc. across the board and pulling them in line with what they want, instead of making an arbitrary unlock. Woodcutting and fishing are quite slow to train as it is, and could use a buff in general. Maybe instead of adding the aura effects as a permanent buff, increase the catch rates with a bit, or chopping rates or whatever, and buff the experience rates on top of that. This way, they will also not encounter another issue they mentioned in the blog, and that's power creep regarding skilling. A flat percentage buff means that in the future, when a new piece of content releases, they will have to consider this buff existing as well. That hypothetical new tree that would release isn't just 800k experience an hour with no regular buffs, but also has that 15% lumberjack buff on top of it. Why not make your job easier and have less buffs? And it's even something they mentioned in the blog, where they want you to just go out and just skill and not have to worry about a list of buffs you should be obtaining. I don't know, man. I just find it a bit of a weird approach on these gathering skill ones, and I kind of feel the same way about the other skill ones too. Whilst I don't think these are necessarily bad, they just feel misplaced. Green Fingers gives a buff to the yield of farming crops, which they want to make as an unlock from the Dungeoneering shop. Why not have it be a part of the Crocs equal Night shop instead, where you unlock other farming buffs too, like planting multiple seeds at once, or yet again, buffing yields across the board if that is actually an issue. And the 5-finger discount aura, which buffs your success chance of pickpocketing, making it more AFK in general. As it stands right now with the recent changes, again, you will be able to AFK for 5 to 6 minutes when you have your crystal mask active, and it's kind of funny because that crystal mask will kind of get devalued when this aura becomes a permanent buff, because it will probably be a lot easier to obtain. And didn't we all just get mad about crystal mask losing its value? If you can get this 5-finger discount aura effect as a permanent buff, that means pickpocketing rate will get buffed before using your crystal mask, and isn't that exactly what we wanted? That crystal mask is like a really good unlock? I don't know. I might be missing something, but that's just kind of how I feel about it. TLDR, look at the gather rates and XP rates across the board for skills, buff those where necessary, and leave these buffs in the past, avoiding power creep down the line and increasing simplicity of skilling. Okay, let's talk about Vampirism and Penance. Two auras that I'm kind of hesitant on replacing with permanent unlocks, because they affect something a lot of people don't seem to be considering: the actual usage of prayer potions and food. Let's start off with the Penance aura, as it's a bit of a simpler fix to me. we already have Penance powder in the game from Whirligigs. The Penance effects makes it so that you regain prayer potions when hitting targets. Introducing this change will make this powder the only way to get this pretty much infinite prayer effect. Not only does this make it so that the usage of prayer potions remains relevant until you have enough money to buy these powders or gather them yourself late game, it also creates a very solid skilling moneymaker with the Whirligigs, because these powders will be highly coveted and quite expensive. The issue is that golden roses, the way to hunt these Whirligigs, are quite rare to get, so jagex could look at tweaking the gather rates of them, maybe increasing the hunter level a little bit as well, because 20 seems a bit low for something like this, and this way you just have a really good skilling moneymaker. You can use the powders to not have to use prayer potions, but it will cost you money, and you will also still keep prayer potions relevant up until that point. I think that's a great balancing fix. But something I don't think should be balanced, and arguably should be removed, is the Vampirism aura effect. This effect heals you back a bit of health for the damage you do. The current options for replacing it are tweaking the scrimshaw earned through player-owned boards to work with all styles instead of just melee, updating the blood essence earned from the Vampirism questline completion, the Chevalric god book, which I don't know, is probably not the best shout in general as it feels a bit random, or a new reward in general. Whilst I think the zombie book is not the solution, I don't think the first two are either. The odd thing about the Vampi aura is that it's used by two very distinct groups. Low level players trying to learn content, and people who are AFK monsters to gain XP/GP. So what you want to do is to find a way for it to be available to lower level players, and completing the entire vampire questline or getting it yourself through the awful content that is player on boards is not the solution. And here comes the hot take of the video. I mentioned it already. Do we need a healing effect available in the first place? Yes, of course, I know we do have Soul Split, but that's very end game and it makes sense that you're sacrificing some protection later on because it's an overhead prayer. Sure, Vampirism helps low level players learn some content to an extent, as it also gives you a false sense of security. But making it available early on means that it's also available for everyone. Which means you can have a permanent healing effect with every single piece of content you do. In turn, making you not use that much food and devaluing fishing/cooking even more than it already is. As it stands right now, it's very easy to sustain in a lot of situations by using the Vampirism aura. I remember playing the group Ironman and using a daily Vampirism aura to do an hour of AFK ghouls whilst editing, as I didn't have to use any food at all, and if I wasn't using it, I could only quote-unquote AFK for like 10 minutes maximum, which I couldn't even call AFK as I had to eat throughout it to not perish. Which, in hindsight, kind of shows how terribly powerful this is. Not needing any food for an hour of combat is kind of insane. So let me ask you, would it really be so bad to have this effect permanently removed, and especially with the idea in mind that food is getting buffed across the board as well with the combat changes? Let's take a Rocktail as an example. Before the changes, at level 92 hit points, it would heal the full 2300 health. But at level 10 hit points, it would only heal 250 health. On top of that, eating a piece of food would also drain 10% adrenaline, and this will be changed to 3%. Just like how all foods will now just heal the full amount, regardless of your hit points level. And yes, I refuse to call it Constitution. Deal with it. TLDR, eating food will be a lot less punishing during combat, and whilst learning a new boss, if you are chomping on a lot of food, you will still be able to use abilities, whereas before you could pretty much only use your basics because you never had enough adrenaline to use your actual powerful abilities, in turn making it a lot easier to actually finish off the boss because you can do more damage and, you know, take less damage because you kill the boss quicker. Simple maths. So with these changes, do we actually need an extra passive healing effect? With the danger that this could devalue food, especially in the mid to late game, and take away a core element of RuneScape, and an RPG for that matter, inventory and supply management. So I would argue, leave Vampirism behind and see if the new food changes are enough for lower level players. If this isn't the case, you can always introduce a Vampirism effect with Havenite Part 2, as there is a Vampirism theme there, and it would kinda just fit the vibe. And yes, for all the AFKers, I know I'm not the biggest AFK fan, you would still have Guttons to passively heal you when using melee, but maybe introduce 2 new armor sets for magic and range in future pieces of content, although magic does have Blood Barrage, but give them some armor sets that are mid-level, that are pretty attainable, that have a healing effect. That way it's a lot more engaging to get something like that, and it feels like a reward and an upgrade path, instead of just, hey, here, have a flat buff for all the levels for everything. And it's also a trade-off, and it works for exactly everyone that needs it, because I'm not going to use a tier 70 armor set when I am 120 combat stats, because I don't need the heals in the first place, but even if I do, I will sacrifice some of my damage, well, quite a lot of my damage, to be able to heal. Good balancing in my opinion, and it sounds a lot more fun than just boring passive buffs. There are some small things I didn't touch on, but these are definitely the big hitters. If you are interested, go read the blog yourself in the description. Let me know down below what you think, and like the video if you agree and also disagree. It is actually allowed, but just have a fun discussion down below, and then we'll all be alright. Subscribe if you're new, and my name's Chevalric, and see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.